everyone, and welcome back to the Organizing to Victory podcast, where we're talking garage politics. My name's Lee Perry, and on today's episode, we have Angie Gardner, the former mayor of Eatonville, who is now running for Orange County Commissioner in the new District 7. She talks about some of the myths that have been communicated around the Hungerford property, and also talks through some of her priorities that she wants to champion, like community-driven public safety measures, making sure we have true resiliency against flooding, and just bringing our community together and having truly accessible leadership. So here's my conversation with Angie. All right, everyone, we have a legacy public servant here, Angie Gardner, former mayor of Eatonville, and is now running for Orange County District 7. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. It is morning. We do shoot these a little bit farther in advance, but so I'm curious, I see you everywhere and everyone knows who you are, but do people know where you live and how you came into politics? So I'd love for you to start with how you got here.
So my political story is not very long at all. I've lived in Eatonville since 1991, and most of my time was spent raising our daughters, my husband and I. So after my daughters finished, they were sport athletes. Mm-hmm. So all of our time was taken up getting them from one activity to another. But after all that was done, I said, let me find out what's going on in the town. So I started going to meetings probably around 2016, 2017. And there was a lot left to be desired, honestly. I would go to the meetings and it would be very apparent that no one was prepared, no one was ready, and there was a lot of bickering back and forth, and nothing really was accomplished. So I kept paying attention. So around 2018, my husband received a phone call asking me to consider running for mayor. Mm. But what they did not know was that I had already thought about running for mayor prior to that time. So when my husband asked me, I said, what do you think? And he said yes. So I ran for mayor. The people didn't know me as well then, so they said, no, not yet. So I started doing a newsletter around town. I said, well, if it's okay that they didn't know me, it was okay that, you're not ready. So, but let me just enlighten you. And I started doing newsletters based on what was going on in the government, local government. And through those newsletters, just laying to them, what was happening, what policies were being passed, what I thought that meant. Then in 2020, I ran for council. Mm-hmm. They gave me the opportunity to represent them in seat 5. And then in 2022, I then ran for mayor again. And they said, okay, we're ready. Mm-hmm. So 2022 to 2026, I was mayor of the town of Eatonville.
Was there a particular thing that initially made you say, I know you said that you went to a meeting and it seemed like it wasn't really organized, but was there a particular issue that motivated you to even go to that initial meeting?
No, when I first started going, I went because I didn't know what was going on.
Okay.
And then when I started going, I literally was just sat there. I was more informed about the issues. I can't tell you what specific issue because it was everything pretty much. Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, sitting there one day, I said, well, man, if anyone just do this job and do what's right, we would all be better off. And that's what made me start thinking about running for mayor. Because I knew that if you just took the job of being mayor, not that the current mayor wasn't doing right, mm-hmm. but I felt that anyone in any of those positions, if you just did what was right, if you came prepared, if you understood the issues, if you articulated it well to each other, then perhaps policies would be stronger. Right. Perhaps people would be more engaged. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. So that was my reason for running.
Well, I have to say my personal newsletter is the key to a lot of my success because people really do want to know what's going on, and you have to put information in front of everywhere where there's eyes. So social media, mm-hmm. newsletters, wherever you can get in front of someone, obviously door knocking, etc. And I feel like Eatonville in particular is such a beautiful community with such rich history.
Absolutely.
But a lot of people are working class people who can't necessarily always make the time to do what you did and use their free time to go to a meeting to figure out what's going on. And even when they do, are they getting the information there? And does that keep the town back from being able to have that united front of community resiliency because the information isn't getting into the hands of the people in the right ways to really truly organize?
Well, when I first started going, the only thing you had was the first and third Tuesday meetings. When I became mayor, we started having stakeholders meetings. We started amping up our social media. And then before I came mayor, right before when I was councilwoman, they started with this, making sure the Facebook, so social media did start playing a bigger role in educating everyone. And then with the stakeholders meetings, it allowed those that maybe couldn't make that first and third Tuesday to come out on like the third Thursday, I believe, or third Monday, to come out and get updated on what was going on in town, but also whatever concerned them, they had an opportunity to express their concerns at that time as well. So I thought that helped in between the social media, the town meetings for those that can make it, the stakeholders meetings. We also had town halls, even though that's once a year. It kind of was the report card.
Right.
So between those avenues, we did improve the communication piece.
I love the accessibility. I know we're going to get to your run for commissioner, but I just wish that the meetings were much more accessible at the county. That's where most of my experience has been. It's just, it hurts the whole community if people can't easily communicate their concerns, because then resentment grows and then people don't show up to vote because they feel like government's not working for them. But if they can't even come and express it, or there's no, dialogue, then they're discouraged.
And I think that's where stakeholders meetings come in, because if the representatives can meet with the constituents in between those meetings to let them know what is happening, what's going to be on the agenda. A lot of things on the agenda really are just administrative, right? So that would be the mayor's job. But for the representatives, the commissioners, then it definitely is worthwhile to seek out better meeting times to at least get feedback from the constituents.
Right.
So that's one way that they can extend the commissioner meetings, because they have so much on their agenda. I can't imagine them starting later.
Right.
So they have to start during the day, but those more specific items, those items that would definitely be important to the community, the commissioners should pull those out and then meet with their constituents in between.
Yeah. Well, you are now running for Orange County Commission District 7, the new district that was just redistricted. Why do the jump?
I had already determined that I wasn't going to run for re-election. I became mayor because I said if I went in, did what was right, represented the people, thought about them with every decision, and if you go back in pretty much any meeting where I had to take a vote, I tried to justify why I voted that way. I think that you'll see that my thoughts were always with what is best for the town. When I saw also that, okay, we're going to get the pipes replaced, we're getting bathrooms in Catalina, and I had already put certain things in motion, I felt that it was okay to step away. Okay. I didn't expect to be mayor forever. And being mayor, it did come with its dilemmas. And you have to make a decision, is it worth it? If I've done those things I promised that I would do, because that was important to me, and they're in place, and the next administration, all they have to do is just keep it going, is the rest worth it?
Yeah.
And that's the decision that I had to make.
So tell me about your legacy, because I was organizing in Eatonville right up to when you became mayor. And I heard a lot of those concerns about the piping, the broken pool, some of the, issues with water quality and things like that. What are some of the things that you're proud of the most? I know you just briefly mentioned them, but maybe you can kind of go into depth.
Gosh, I think I'm proud of everything that we did. When I think about communication, even though it didn't matter what we did, someone would say, we're not being communicated with enough, or we need this, we need that. It didn't matter what was instituted, it still was not enough. But I'm very proud of how we did improve our communication pieces. Text.gov, we have a super town clerk. She brought that department up to date. So through text.gov, if you saw a pothole or anything out of the ordinary, you could take a picture, send it to text.gov, and it will get disseminated. Facebook, Instagram, all of the social media accounts. We just got people in place that started doing those things and bringing that up to speed. The newsletter, we didn't do the newsletter as much, but in between everything else, a newsletter, stakeholder meetings. So the communication piece, very proud of. I'm also proud of the fact that when I became mayor, partners on the outside took a chance again. So when we talk about the pool was it was in disrepair, and it had been in disrepair for years. And then COVID hit, and it just completely, green water, and it just wasn't safe. But a partner came in, All Seasons Pools, came in and said, hey, we'll do it. And now they call it the Eatonville Resort, So I'm very proud of that because it brought people together. And
now I'm seeing like after school programs and summer programs and swimming classes. And
Absolutely.
It becomes an economic resource. Absolutely. And it becomes a little piece of tourism in a way. Yes. And community enrichment.
And a community hub. So I'm very proud of that. In Catalina Park, I had visited there, several times, and I would notice the little children go into the little wooded area. And at first, I wasn't certain, but then it was obvious they were going to use the bathroom because they didn't want to have to go all the way back home and maybe have to stay home because they wanted to continue to play.
Okay.
But then I saw adults go in there. And it wasn't a ton of adults or, it wasn't, but it was enough to catch my attention. And I said, man, we got to get bathrooms out here. So when I became council person, I started looking up, the cost of bathrooms. They're expensive. And then I said, well, dog, if we're going to put a bathroom in there, you can put a whole building. And then I would notice, I thought about what I had already noticed. As I was walking and delivering the newsletters, I would notice young adults, like on the corners. And I said, it would be wonderful if the young adults could pair up with the officers and just build a reputation, just relationships, right? So when you think about the cost of a bathroom, that equals the cost of a building, then it came about a DOJ grant, Department of Justice grant. And that's when I put it all together. Not only could you bring in bathrooms, but you could bring in we call it a PAL Clubhouse now, because it wasn't about bringing law enforcement into Catalina Park. But because it was DOJ, you had to have the law enforcement piece to it. So you can get bathrooms in there for the occupants or the patrons that go to the park, but you can also have a meeting space. So now that meeting space could be for seniors that wanted to meet to talk about, and the chief could talk about safety. It could bring in those young men that want to come in and just hang out with the chief or the officer that's monitoring the building. Any place where they can join together to have meaningful conversation and to start building relationships, then that brings safety into people.
And that also brings in community buy-in too, because a lot of people are like, I don't want bathrooms there because if they lock, someone could go in that's homeless or an addict or what have you. So it also brings like another layer of safety so people can feel comfortable with like that kind of foot traffic. But like it's already dangerous to have kids going into the woods, So that's really exciting. What are some things that you wish you could maybe communicate on further, if there's any misconceptions on your leadership?
On my leadership.
Or on a project?
Well, if I go a little further with that project, when a few people in the community didn't want it, they started saying I was trying to bring the police into the park.
Yeah.
Disrupt what we've done. We're here all the time. This is our park, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But that really was not the case. It was stretching the dollars, bringing in bathrooms. That was the ultimate goal. But in doing that, the Powell Clubhouse, I think if they give it time, they're going to see how it will benefit that area so much. Just having a place to meet instead of having everyone going to the Denton Johnson Center.
Yeah.
Which is on the east end of town. However, if you just have a little place to meet, as long as it's cleared through the chief and it's related to safety, that space will be useful to anyone that needed to use it.
Yeah, it's really great. Well, I guess most specifically, there's been a lot of headlines about the Hungerford property. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of, I didn't show up to the meetings, but I saw some of the meetings online, and I saw some of the posts afterwards and read the articles. And, at first glance, because, I've lived in this community for years and years and years, it's like exciting to hear that something is coming with this property that could bring so much community enrichment. But I think there was a lot of negativity around it and around what was done.
Yes.
So I'd love to really hear your version of how this project, came to be.
The town was going through a master planning process for the whole town. People were pushing back against that. Master planning is simply a big wish list of if you can change the town or include certain aspects, what elements would you include? And with that came stories from people. Oh, Mr. Johnson's store used to be here, or that used to be this, and if anyone took the time to come to those meetings, they would have benefited from those stories because it brought back the history in this master planning process.
Right.
Part of that master planning was the Hungerford property. So they did put in, when I say they, the attendees to the master planning meetings did put in their input and what would you like to see on that property? Then after that whole process was maybe 18 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, 18 weeks, something like that. The last piece was, well, how do we go about, what's the next step? How do we go about financing all of this? Mm-hmm. And that meant if you wanted a grocery store, then you had to go out and court the retailers and those corporations that could bring in a grocery store. And you had to do feasibility studies. You had to do all of that to make certain that, first of all, what you want there is feasible. And also, who's willing to come into the town to do that. Mm-hmm. But then Dr. Phillips stepped up, and they said, hey, Mayor, we'd like to help you with that. But we don't have to. Mm-hmm. If you don't want us here, we'll walk away. It was no pressure, no real backdoor meetings, nothing like that. It was a conversation like you and I are having, like mayors have all the time. And I had to think about it because for me, the real win for the town would have been for the town to receive the land, for it to go into a land trust, and that way we can protect the land for generations to come. Mm-hmm. That is common sense, that would be the win. But I already knew and I already suspected that there were going to be problems within the town. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be as frank as possible. And what I truly believed was that if the town received the land, number one, to do the land trust and all of that, that was going to take even more resources.
And years.
And expertise. Mm-hmm. And at this moment, we do not have it. Mm-hmm. That is not shade on the town at all. That's fact. Because if we had those resources, then we would have done something before now. Mm-hmm. So I thought about that. And then I said to myself, if we don't put it in a land trust and land comes directly over to the town, there was going to be an effort for that land to be moved over to the CRA. Mm-hmm. And once it's over to the CRA, there's a whole nother set of rules. And I was not comfortable with that at all. Mm-hmm. And if you look at some meetings, even since I've left office, look at the meetings and those persons that really want to know why I may have felt that way, just go back to the last 3-4 meetings since I've left office. Mm-hmm. There was a real concern there. So then the Dr. Phillips option sounded really good.
Yeah.
Because they said they'll take the master plan document, whether it's adopted by the town or not, it's still a document. It is still a document that has the wishes and hopes and dreams of people that cared enough to attend. You know, they should not be ignored simply because a few just want things their way. Mm-hmm. So when Dr. Phillips said, we'll use that document to guide us, why not? Mm-hmm. And that's why I said I would support their going to the school board.
Yeah. So, a CRA sounds really great when you look at communities like Winter Garden. Mm-hmm. I've always been like a huge proponent of that CRA. And then I point to it for examples, but, to get commerce and to get affordable housing and walkability and pedestrian safety infrastructure, like investment in areas that were like extremely blighted to have like a turnkey way. But now just this past month, so many businesses were gobbled up by private companies outside of Florida that raised the rates beyond what these small mom and pop businesses that basically were the culture of that community and pushed them out. And now a lot of people are upset because the protections aren't necessarily there. So CRAs have their place and I think that it can be really good, but it does add more obstacles to create more time and resources needed to get the whole CRA implemented. So, that definitely is something. Now, I would assume that the reason why people were apprehensive about like Dr. Phillips coming in is when you have a community that's been systemically under-resourced, the trust to have an outside partner come to the table without the fear of some other motive, I'm sure is probably one of the reasons. What do you think, what reassurances did you have to make sure that this land wasn't just going to be developed and then sold and then people were just going to be like slowly gentrified? I guess maybe that's the fear.
So part of it was trust. I know that sounds naive, but at some point that land was sitting there. The town does not own the land. And I think that people think that maybe the town owned it. It was not our land to sell. It wasn't our land to keep. The town never owned the land. It was always in a trust. And then the school board got it through that process. So a couple of things had to happen. First, we had a guiding document. So then if someone's keeping their word or not. The other was the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. And in the Memorandum of Understanding, it just laid out some of the basic elements of what you said you would do.
Right.
Not everything. It didn't cover all the land, just those particular elements. So that was the first part. And then the rest, they were going to do an advisory board, which they've already established an advisory board. And through the advisory board, it was going to help guide the decisions of what goes onto the land, along with the document. So with those things in place, and the reputation of Dr. Phillips Charities, over 100 years in doing this kind of work, the odds were high that they would do just what they said that they would do because they've done it. And so that's why I felt more comfortable with it, because at first I wasn't. There's
also a lot of misconceptions on what government has the ability to do. I think a lot of times people think once you're a mayor or a commissioner, you have a magic wand that you can just make things happen. And what people seem to forget is that there are a lot of laws and preemptions and hoops that you have to jump through and lack of resources to be able to do certain things. So I try to explain it to people like you are playing a board game, but you only have the pieces that you have.
Yes.
And each city is going to have a different set of pieces and frankly, a different set of rules. And that's government. It's not fair. And you think when you're paying taxes, you should be able to have immediate relief or have your direct concerns addressed. But part of a democracy is that you have a lot of different voices and a lot of different opinions, and you just have to make the best of the resources that you have. So I think I remember hearing and reading some comments about having some affordable housing on the site and doing advocacy work. There's a lot of stigma against affordable housing. It's so unfortunate because what people seem to not realize is that the conservative legislature has jumped through hoops to redefine what affordable housing is in order to subsidize their billion-dollar companies that have basically used public dollars to build luxury apartments that are not compatible with the wages here locally, right? So true affordable housing is not the projects, like what has been stigmatized through racist depictions in our media. Affordable housing right now is actually still not necessarily attainable and accessible to the wage gaps that we have here. But I think a lot of folks had expressed like not wanting affordable housing because they didn't want to be troped into a Black community with affordable housing, that they wanted their sons and daughters to move back into the community and have access to market rate. Market rate right now is pushing people into homelessness. I'm not saying that we don't ever build market rate, but if we don't have diverse income level housing, then the various needs and wages and salaries that people have in this community, very much that 30% to 80% AMI, which is what we have here in this local economy, they'll get pushed out, And so I wonder if folks were driven by some stereotypes around affordable housing in expressing some of their concerns, or was it just a small number of voices? Like, can you clarify with the affordable housing piece? Because in my mind, how cool would it be to have mixed income or true affordable housing in a community where it's just been under-resourced for generations,
So the affordable housing part of it came from two places. Prior to even the master planning, when I became mayor, you have sometimes the opportunity for appropriations. So the representative will call and say, hey, anything you need. First I knew we needed homes. So I wrote up an appropriations request for like 4.1 million. It ended up being 4.1 million. I think it was like 4.6 or something. So 4.1 million for affordable housing. It doesn't matter if you call it attainable, low barrier. It needs to be affordable. But I am one that I think that you should be able to own, not continue to chase rent. So when I say affordable housing, I mean market rate that somehow with some sort of mechanism, whether it's down payment assistance, whether the CRA gives some, you get some from the county, that it closes the margin on what the person can afford and what they need to buy. That way it doesn't affect the value of the homes around it. Because if I have a $500,000 home, I don't want it to be to sell the home next to me at $365,000. And I'm exaggerating on these amounts, but if you can sell the home at $500,000, but then make it attainable by other avenues, such as a down payment assistance or other credits, then that's ownership. We want pure ownership, because I think otherwise rent, whether it's affordable or however you want to call it, income-based, your income will continue to have to go up in order to afford it, right? So so that affordable housing piece was already there before Dr. Phillips. When Dr. Phillips came on board, one of the things I said, well, we have the 4.1 million. I would like to be able to use some of that land to put the townhomes there, because at the time the mindset was townhomes that could be purchased. So that's what the affordable piece was in it from my perspective. The school board also wanted affordable for employees, because they have to be good stewards of the land as well. And that was something that was important to them. So from both sides, affordable housing was going to be important. For me, it was ownership. The other piece in that affordable housing was senior housing. We have no true senior housing, affordable senior housing. So that might have been your multi-unit projects there.
And this was all talked about in the stakeholder meetings. Like this was
the 4.1 million.
Yeah, like during the planning stakeholder meetings, like because you made a reference to them as if some folks that might have been vocal maybe didn't attend some of the stakeholder meetings.
Those persons that were against one thing, they're against everything. Stakeholder meetings, master planning. I would say town hall meetings, but it just wasn't them.
I mean, but what do they want on the land? I'm so confused because right now it's not generating any, jobs or housing.
What I have discovered partly is that they seem to want to do it themselves, to be in charge of any contracts, be in charge of anything that goes in that land, with no experience to do it. Or they want to hire the person to do it. That's dangerous. That was the dangerous part. You have no experience. And yes, we can hire someone, but that's still going to take money. And if we hire a project manager to take care of developing that, not just one plot of land, but it would be a project unit development. Even in hiring, what expertise do you have in hiring the right persons? It was all kinds of pitfalls in that happening. So they simply wanted control over that whole piece. And that didn't make sense.
And were some of the concerns because they didn't want to lose the predominantly African-American community? Like some of the things I've heard are like, we don't want to just build and then allow outsiders to move in and like dilute our culture.
You can say that because it sounds good in front of cameras.
Okay.
But then you can't really justify saying that if two developers back, they were going to put a car dealership on that property and you supported them. And they didn't look like us. And there was no land talked about. So for those persons that know the history, that argument did not make sense. But it sounded good for the cameras.
Yeah. So, I mean, now this property, it has a real opportunity. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was some bidding for like a Black History Museum.
And it's still part of the master plan. And the Black History Museum didn't come through the town at all. But no one complained that they didn't know about that Black History Museum. I found out through Commissioner Moore the first time. But it was a great idea, right? So we supported it. But no one said, that didn't come before us. We didn't say okay to that. But in the master plan for the property now, it is still a space for a museum, a civic center, a new town hall, green space, pavilion. All of those same elements are in this plan. So what are we fighting for?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a really good project, but what's the status of it at this point?
Well, right now, the advisory board has been meeting, and it's a strong advisory board. I will say that Dr. Phillips, they didn't ask for my input, anyone else's input, but they pulled together some strong voices, true advocates for the town, those that have expertise in certain areas. So they did a great job with that. The other piece is that PEC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, with PEC as their client, is now suing the school board over that land, over the deal. So we'll see how that pans out. And ultimately, I think they just want the school board to go through the process again. So once they go through the process, they still can end up getting Dr. Phillips, or the lawsuit can be thrown out. We don't know.
One thing that, as an outsider, that this hurts my heart is that I know from working at the county that the longer these projects take, the more expensive they become. I mean, tariffs, inflation, just having a demand for the labor now with all of our migrants being, under attack, being able to keep the labor that we need in order to build these projects in a timely manner. I'm really worried that the longer that this is in litigation, the more that we're going to see the costs going up, and maybe even some partners a little less willing to foot the bill. And I understand that people probably want to have that land trust and the control, because ultimately the town wants to have control of its own destiny as a whole. But like you said, time, process, resources, and Dr. Phillips does have a history of, doing projects and having a favorable result for the local economy,
Absolutely. And I also wanted to put in another caveat. Right now, I've been teaching for over 20 years. And right now, the school board is being slammed. All school boards.
Yeah.
It started with co-location of private schools. That land is owned by the school board. School boards are under the state. What is to stop the state from commandeering that land?
Oh my God.
For a private school.
I haven't thought about that.
So it needs to be done now.
We need to edit that out so they don't get any ideas.
Right? I mean, you're talking over 80 acres.
I mean, they're closing schools left and right, but they're trying to infiltrate charter schools.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, the next best step after this election year is to just start coming in and taking over the land themselves.
Take the land.
And put whatever they want.
So who better to protect it? Then they could even preempt our local government. So it made even more sense for Dr. Phillips to step in, a nonprofit that can own the land and do for the town what the town has stated it wanted to be done.
A nonprofit that also has skin in the game locally, who doesn't want to be at the epicenter of scandal.
Absolutely.
That if a historic Black community is coming out with pitchforks, like, they're going to take the stakeholder meeting notes and try to apply it down to the T, because they don't want to look insensitive to the needs and concerns and the input. So, I mean, it adds up to make sense.
And it's not the whole community. The voices that you hear, that's pretty much it. Most of the community is okay with it.
Yeah.
They may not say anything because they don't want pressure turned toward them. But one of the reasons I stood firm is because of those voices. If the promise is to do what is right for the town, then that is what I did.
Right.
It was nothing that, Angie wanted to do on her own, although I thought that was the best idea, but there were many people in the community that were for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And still are.
And right now, you have Representative Ana Viescamani and Congressman Frost, who I believe are at a phone call away to be able to support you. But in an election year where both of them are under attack, I mean, the risks are all adding up to surmount to maybe a complete control, a loss of control over that property if even just this year electorally goes against us. So we have to be diligent for sure.
Right.
So just transitioning, unless you had any closing comments about the Hungerford property, I'd love to talk about your transition into running for commissioner. It's just as loud. You get a lot of people from every walks of life and every, micro community who are going to have opinions, some of which are not fully representative of their communities, but some of which, are really deeply embedded. And you have proven that you can sit through long meetings where people are throwing daggers and be able to still keep your composure. So that's, I think, a first attribute. But what is inspiring you to run for commissioner? What are some things you want to do?
I really love this work. When I ran for councilwoman, I made promises. Someone said, don't make promises. Don't make promises. Well, why run for office if you can't make promises?
Right.
And if for some reason you can't keep them, then be open and say why. Then when I ran for mayor, I made promises and I kept those promises. I love that work. It's one thing to just talk, and have no authority to do anything. But being commissioner, because I said I wasn't going to run for mayor again, the town has, about 2,300 people? But being commissioner is close to 200,000 people. So I'm doing the same work, but I'm able to really just focus on the work. The office of mayor comes with a whole nother bucket of issues. Which I enjoyed that learning curve as well. But I truly, now that I could step back as commissioner, I could see where I could have been a stronger council person in the town of Eatonville and take that experience to be a strong commissioner in District 7. There is a difference. And being able to know your role will allow you to put all your energy into making those changes that you do have the authority and put all your energy there, because then it will make the county stronger.
Yeah.
Instead of a commissioner trying to do mayor duties, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But if you put someone in that position that does understand what being the commissioner is versus the mayor versus a state rep, you have to pay attention to all of that, yes, but focus on your area. Because if you focus on your area and you strengthen that area and you work with the constituents and you hear their stories and you suggest changes that will improve their lives, chances are it's going to help all the 7 other districts.
Right. Well, I actually personally was against the redistricting. I came out with Commissioner Sumrad. We were the only 2 that spoke out against it. I see why it's so needed and so important, but for a couple reasons. One, we just went through the census, and during COVID, it was just, to me, not right. I think we needed to wait till 2030 to really know the numbers, because people were moving here in rapid rates, and now people are leaving at rapid rates. So I think we need to really know the data before we do the redistricting. But number 2, the reason why is because money has just infiltrated our political system so much, to the point where, as an activist, going and bringing 100 people to the Board of County Commission and crying about something, having 2 more votes that could possibly be infiltrated with that same money to try and convince and flip makes it just 2 more votes harder. As someone who is unapologetically for the environment, unapologetically against, the tourism industry, starving our wages. And, it's just harder to beat that money. Right. And I think now some of the fears that I have are really around capacity needs in the county. A lot of the staff are stretched so thin, and to think they're going to have 2 more commissioners worth of emails and inquiries to talk about and to stretch, then I think if this reform is coming in, we need real reform. And in the same minute that we're redistricting, the state is now contemplating ripping away a vital resource of our property taxes so that we can actually do the work, right? So given all these, turbulent factors, you're coming into a culture war. You're coming into a situation where you have a bigger population of people that you have to make sure they feel heard and that their needs are met. But then you also have to deliver on some of those promises, even with the state attacking you. So I think one of the main things I always tell people who want to run for office is there's a huge difference between people that campaign really hard and disappear and people who fully embed themselves into the community. And I can tell just from how you said that you were making the engagement more accessible that you're going to want to be one of those people. But have you had any ideas of, with the limitations and with some of the attacks that the state has been doing on preemption, et cetera, how you plan to combat some of those factors?
Well, when you think about going from 6 to 8 districts, the number of people are still going to be the number of people. The number of emails are still going to be the same number of emails. But if you have a commissioner that's effective, then it shouldn't be as many emails to the staff as it is to that commissioner. Because if 7 and 8 were not there, those same citizens were going to have the same concerns. So they were going to send the same email. You see what I mean?
Well,
so if you kind of branch it out a little bit.
I'd like to believe that. Yeah. The only difference is that some of the commissioners, not all of the commissioners, look at this as a part-time job. So what they do is there's a difference between forwarding an email to staff and going out into the community and knocking on doors and getting the input and then putting that into an email. And so the leadership styles, I've literally had some commissioners that have told Commissioner Sumrad, you only need to be here every other Tuesday. You just let your staff do the rest. And the job is a full-time job. I mean, you need to be if you're going to lead and champion, you're doing satellite office hours, you're going out to find those people that don't engage with government and bringing them in, which would surmount to more emails and such if you're not taking the job as part-time.
But I truly believe that stakeholder meetings should fill in the extra time. You don't have to have one, even once a month. I believe that going to the different functions that are happening, that informs you as well. And I see the staff, the commissioner's staff, as helping in that, creating systems within a larger system that it seems to me that would be that commissioner's job to take care of those issues. And only those issues that cannot be taken care of by the commissioner should be sent on.
Yeah.
A lot of the answers that the majority of the people have should be able to be answered by your staff instead of loading it, just sending it on through. So I've never been that type. Being mayor is a little different because the town of Eatonville, the mayor was part-time. You had to work. So your staff, you have chief administrative officer, that they took care of the day-to-day. That was their job. But as commissioner, I do see it differently. I see it as I would have when I was councilwoman, that seat 5 didn't entail a certain area, though. It kind of boiled down to those residents that felt more comfortable calling you than they did anyone else. But as a commissioner, if that's my district, to me, that is who I'm responsible for. I should know everything that's going on. I should know what the issue was, how it was handled, who handled it, and was that accurate. I don't see any way around that. That's the job.
Yeah. And you have diverse communities too. You have Maitland and Pine Hills and College Park, Rosemont. You have a very diverse community, including, your stomping grounds. So, it's going to be an adventure. What are some of the things when you're out in the community that people are bringing up as their concerns now?
Well, in regards to, let's talk, we went to a design meeting and this was pretty cool. This is for College Park. And how they're rebranding Edgewater to the Drive. So I went into their meeting, and they were literally talking about how they're going to, some of the rebranding things that they'd be doing. And as I was sitting there, they have a jazz festival every year. Mm-hmm. They've been having it like for 25 years. And part of the conversation was getting funding to help with that. But they never went to TDT to get TDT funds for it. Mm-hmm. Because they were attracting people coming out of state. Some of them were staying overnight. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that they could do. For something like that, it's almost a monitoring. They'll tell me or the commissioner how I can help. But at the same time, I visit in to see what's going on. Because there are times that they don't know there's help and the county can help.
Yeah.
Same with Maitland. Maitland has a CRA. CRA should have a representative from the county. So it would be a matter of me at least meeting with the CRA representative to get feedback on what's going on. Mm-hmm. You know, are they aligning with the county? Because that's part of what CRA's, that representative should kind of have some sort of, information about. For those other areas that are county related, it's a little more in depth. Mm-hmm. The county has already put some things in place for Orlo Vista, for instance, with the flooding. Making sure that works, because not all of Orlo Vista floods, but those areas that do, are those mechanisms working that they've put in place? And if they're not working, that's when you start talking to the citizens. Like right now, it's starting to rain. Mm-hmm. Driving through on a rainy day, are you starting to see puddles? Start getting on it. Start talking to administration to say, hey, it's already an issue. How are we going to combat that?
Yeah.
Because it's more than cleaning out ditches, although that's part of it. But it's also looking at the lakes. How high are they? Mm-hmm. Have they been dredged? Are you creating another space for water to go? That's one thing that we did in Catalina Park, because flooding is out there. It took civil engineering to come out there to get a plan. So now we are attacking that through design. Mm-hmm. So is the design working? What was the other part of your question?
Well, I was just asking about some of the concerns you're hearing when you're knocking on doors, all throughout your very diverse community. I mean, flooding is everywhere. It's in College Park. I'm here in Fairview Shores. You brought up Orlo Vista. People are kind of losing their livelihood in a way where their home gets, messed up from a hurricane, and then their home gets messed up the next year from a tropical storm. And then, and it feels like a lot of the infrastructure is very outdated, or even some poor planning that didn't really take into account 100-year floods that are happening now almost every year. So
and on top of that, affordable housing. Oh, yeah. I mean, and you were hearing that, but then I need to know, so what if the house that I'm living in is not mine and it's flooding?
Right. And your landlord is nowhere to be seen or heard.
Absolutely.
You have a lot of that corporate accountability that needs to be done. But I did hear you bring up TDT. Mm-hmm. I would love to know if you're interested in either expanding or diversifying TDT, because right now, there's an army of lobbyists from our local tourism industry that goes up to Tallahassee to fight pieces of legislation like the one that Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith introduced to be able to broaden and expand the use of TDT. And it makes it really hard if it's not an arena or a convention center or marketing from Visit Orlando. It makes it really hard to break up some of that money and put it into communities. So some commissioners go up and really fight for it and talk to legislators, but some are kind of also okay with, $30 or $40 million going to Visit Orlando, even if they misclassify it into their private accounts where it's untraceable. I mean, what is your sentiment on tourism development tax dollars?
So I sat in the Tourist Development Council, and I'm not going to tell you I'm against TDT funds being utilized for keeping Florida as a visiting Mecca. Because if that doesn't happen, then I don't want state taxes to be imposed. And one way that we don't have to pay state taxes is because we have TDT funds. So that's one thing. And right now, what I'm hearing is that TDT funds, well, and let's go back to the vote. The vote was for it to be used for certain things. And all of those things seem to have to do with something that brings foot traffic into municipalities, heads in beds, and it creates, just a steady flow of visitors, because that's what we do. I'm not against that. I believe that if the monies are to be used for anything, because I'm hearing transportation. If transportation is not being, if a store is not getting the income to stay open, then the banks don't give the store. You have to fix what is the problem? Why aren't the buses filled? And I know part of it is the routes and all of that, and the frequency of the routes. So let's fix that. Let's fix that. If also when someone builds a building, say on iDrive, wherever, they pay impact fees. Where are the impact fees going? So let's make certain that impact fees are being placed and spent where they should be placed and spent. And then after all of that, if TDT funds are still the next thing that needs to be looked at, then let's look at it.
Right.
So I'm okay with that, as long as we're not grabbing the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because sometimes people don't want to find the ultimate root of the problem, but they go to a quick fix. This is how we can fix it. I'm not about quick fixes. I'm about what's going to be sustainable over time.
Yeah, for sure. I think, those audits that the Department of Commerce are doing are kind of just photo ops to try and attack local governments to justify, removing property taxes. I don't agree with the way that they're handling the FAFO department. But I do believe that we need to find a way to make our current tax dollars be as efficient as possible.
No doubt.
The making sure we're doing our own independent, internal auditing and not acting like we're perfect.
Right.
Like really actually trying to make sure dollars are going to where they need to go. But since COVID, the cost of everything has quadrupled and our impact fees have been capped because of preemption from the state legislature. So we're sinking into this $64 million deficit for our transportation needs. And because we've prioritized sprawling out in our infrastructure and not building infill, the ridership isn't there enough to justify expanding routes because we don't have the density that we need. And so, I think sometimes, when we're sharing the road with 75 million tourists every single year, the tourism development tax in other cities has been a model for making sure that those gaps get filled because, they use our landfill space. We're going to run out of space in our landfill in the next 10 years. They're using our water, and our aquifer right now is at a deadly low level. They're using all these things that we can't tax because the state has handcuffed local governments from being able to be hired in their office to make decisions with the local dollars that they generate.
And that's justifiable, right?
It's really sad that we have to be in a constant war with our own state. But as a local elected, I love that you basically said tourism has a very important place in our local economy. We have a really important opportunity to work with the tourism industry. It's just that at the same time, what incentive does Disney have, for example, to let the tourists leave Disney and come into Eatonville and come into College Park? It's in their best interest that the dollars stay as close as possible so that tourists can stay as close as possible, spend their money in that local microeconomy. And so like for me personally, I'm a huge advocate for telling the tourism industry, please share our public dollars, but also looking at other innovative ways to tax the tourism impact. Food and beverage taxes like they do in Miami and other forms of tax reform. Think outside the box, maybe try something new and hire a team of lawyers to explore how we can get around the preemption. It's just, sometimes if I always check campaign contributions and I'm like, who has all the Disney resorts and LLCs funding their campaign, because those are the people that are probably not going to want to fight to be a partner with tourism to diversify that revenue generation in our community. But the benefits, we're talking about this Hungerford property. You had to work for years and mayors before you had to work for years to find the resources just to bring something into the community that could be an asset. How long was the pool, under-resourced? But yet there's 75 million tourists that come here and spend so much money every year that if we spread it around, small communities that you've been fighting to represent could have a piece of the pie and get some relief.
And I agree, because as I was saying, even with College Park is probably not hurting for funds, but they are bringing tourists in. So if you're bringing tourists into your community, and if you are able to let their dollars loop 2 or 3 times, then you've benefited. And then now you have revenue in your community to spend for some of those things, those improvements that you need. The same with the town of Eatonville. If that Hungerford property is developed with the museum, with the civic center meeting space, then that's a reason for people to come into the town of Eatonville. That's the local municipal's job to make those decisions. And then you ask for TDT funds to help with that. That brings money and capital into your community.
Yeah.
I think that they have that responsibility so that's one way to get those funds, but also creating jobs.
Yeah.
And I think that works a little better. You stated something about infill. I definitely agree with infill. I don't think that anyone in the town of Eatonville, we have a lot of churches, but some of those churches have a lot of land. And I believe that, and some of them have residential infill properties. They need to be developed.
Oh, for sure. And now we have that state, the one good bill, Yes in God's Backyard is what they're calling it.
I'm not crazy about that.
Yeah. But I mean, it's opening up the conversation for churches to be able to have their land, be utilized for housing needs.
But now communities like the town of Eatonville, that would do more damage.
True.
Than developing that school board property.
Because you don't get to necessarily have a say.
You won't have a say.
See, that really bothers me. That's another loophole. It's like they give you a carrot and they say, don't you want housing? And then they say, but your local government doesn't get to have a say.
Yeah. So that really takes away home rule. And I think that's dangerous for small towns like the town of Eatonville.
Instead of creating, through the Sadowski Fund, like an incentive for your local governments to partner with churches to be able to plan for an affordable housing unit that fits the character of the community, which is another thing that could be happening if the state wanted to be a true ally to local government.
And a lot of churches need the extra income.
Yeah.
So, and if you are in a small town like ours with all those churches, what if every church has some space to build units such as that?
Yeah. So you have 16 people in your race.
Oh, it's now 16?
Somebody just filed last week.
I don't know.
I don't know who it is. But I'm curious if you have a set of policies in mind that set you apart that you really want to speak to.
I mean, there are 3 areas that I would definitely look at safety. Safety in regards to community policing. because I believe that community policing involves so many different aspects that not only will bring people together, but also focus on more green space everywhere. So we don't become concrete jungles and everyone in their little, square boxes. I think that's very important. The second would be economic development. Small businesses, they can sustain a community. When you have big box companies, they close down and it looks like a desert and they have all that land sitting there. And what do you do with that? So I believe in small businesses and their ability to grow and expand and getting them the resources that they need. Mayor's Business Development Academy was one reason for that. Training them to let them know how do they have access to grant funds that are coming. I don't know how it's going to look in the future, but just letting them know how the laws are changing. And then for accessibility to healthcare, looking at some other options for people to get insured. My grandson's father, he died from a blood disease. Part of the problem was he went like 3 years being undiagnosed because he didn't have insurance. They kept blowing him off, saying it was eczema. We can't keep letting that happen. But what if we had block grants? And what if we had other like health savings programs or they can pay directly to certain doctors, for preventative care. We have to look at it in every aspect that there is for accessibility to healthcare, and then also accessibility to housing. Housing doesn't have to look like housing has always looked. When students go off to college, they're in dorms. Some of them love dorm life. How would that look on the economy? Dorm life. You go to Rollins College, some of those dorms look really nice. So what if we put that kind of concept in our communities? And it might be cheaper and it won't be it won't take as much blueprints. It'll be a smaller footprint.
If we just did dorm-like senior housing, we could take a huge population of our unhoused.
Yes.
Because it is like the largest demographic of people that are going completely homeless with nothing are seniors right now.
And not being alone so much.
Right.
They can go into their rooms, but common spaces bring them together. And one of the biggest problems with mental health is loneliness.
100%.
So through community policing, bringing people together.
Yeah. Through
dorm type living, bringing people together, but also accessory dwelling units. And especially for those homes that were built years ago, they have more space. Even building one unit, if every house can house someone else, I'm all for accessory dwelling units, more so than building 6-story multi-unit slabs of walls and concrete.
Right.
That's just not working because we're still needing them. Yeah. But what else can we do?
Yeah, and changing the zoning laws. Changing some of the zoning laws so that you can have more than just one accessory dwelling. You can have a duplex or a quadplex or something like that.
If you have that land, yes.
Yeah. I think that's really exciting because we need to think outside the box, and especially with community policing. I just watched a documentary on Mayor Brandon Smith from, I think it's Smith or Scott, but from Baltimore. And they had one of the highest death rates from gun violence. And in just 2 years, he brought it down by like 40% through community policing. Such an awesome concept of getting those who have been directly impacted from gun violence and giving them jobs to do rapid response so that after something happens like a gang shooting, you're getting in with the community so that you're de-escalating so there's not retaliation. Yes. And you're also making sure that returning citizens are now employed to talk to their neighbors. Don't be like me. Let's get you in with a job and become case managers.
Absolutely.
And now they're productive members in society who are not homeless because they can't get a job. They're now given a job, and now they're, paying taxes, and they're productive members of society. So it's like right now we have a huge demographic of returning citizens who did their time, and they're just not able to get an apartment, not able to make the down payments.
Just don't get a second chance.
They don't get the real second chance that we claim to be able to do here in America.
That's right. And community policing can look like whatever you need it to look like. It may look different in Pine Hills than it will in Maitland, than it will in Orlo Vista. You can shape it to how it fits your community.
And I think in our community particularly, especially since District 7 has Pine Hills. Pine Hills has a really just stereotypical reputation of being crime hills, quote unquote. I think that doing a lot of organizing work in Pine Hills and getting to really meet the residents, they're hungry for opportunity that's more than just a community meeting after a shooting.
Absolutely.
Like they really want to see an office on gun violence that can take calls, that can, something more than just the sheriff's office. I'm not saying that unincorporated Orange County has a bad sheriff's office. I really like working with Orange County sheriffs, but I think that sheriffs are also not funded what they need to be funded. But the gang violence between, I believe, Winter Garden, Tildenville, Pine Hills, and Apopka is this systemic, thing where when you go in and you talk to the families, they just don't really even know who to direct their concerns if it's not the police. And as soon as you get the police involved, they're scared.
They gotta do their job.
Right.
I also believe that you have to go young. Youth activities, you have to start when they're born. When they're born, and one of the things my girls did was sports. They did sports because they did sports, but you have kids that are very talented in drama, in the arts, the performing arts, the visual arts. Whatever it is your child shows interest in, let's start building those characters early. Let's get them busy doing something that's more proactive and beneficial to their lives. And I think we can reduce it that way. So while we're working on what's already in our midst, let's go ahead and start a better pathway for those, starting with Head Start.
Well, I mean, Head Start's always under attack from the federal and state government too. But I went to a few funerals of young men that were 15 who were shot from gang violence. And some of it isn't even gang violence. It's just senseless violence to get recognition.
Right.
But one of the things that I realized was that there's a gentleman who works at Orange County who I can't disclose who he is, but he works deep in the community through like the Parks and Rec department. And he said there used to be a program called Rec and Roll where they used to roll out a bus with after school programs. Yep. He said he can draw a direct correlation from when he used to work at Rec and Roll to the gang violence today. And he knows that those young men, when that program ended, they had to find their sense of community through gangs. And he can draw that direct correlation. And I asked, like, what happened? And they just cut the program.
But a program is people. So we need the community to get involved. If we continue to wait for the government to have to do everything, then when there's no funding to pay someone to do that, then that's what's going to happen. But I truly believe in youth programming. We have after school programs in the town of Eatonville. We have the Boys and Girls Club. And you have a lot of nonprofits. They just don't have space. Then one thing that the county can do, if the county can find the space, let the nonprofits run the programs and take that overhead from off them. Right. Let them run the programs. And I think whatever we do would help.
Right. Especially since you brought up green spaces. I'm a huge environmentalist. some of the kids I've worked with in Paramore, I built a lot of community school gardens, even at the Eatonville Boys and Girls Club. We built the garden there. Some of these kids have never even seen a tomato like fresh. Yeah. Like they've never seen, like they don't know where potatoes come from. And they definitely don't know what a forest looks like if they're in just a built environment constantly. Some of the highest levels of asthma and childhood birth defects are in Pine Hills because of the air quality is some of the worst in the country. So green spaces, I think, is a huge opportunity. And there's actually a correlation that shows that communities are more safe. People are more at peace. And violence goes down with green spaces.
It's prettier. It's prettier. When you remove blight, you improve safety. And I also, one way that we can even do that, just take Pine Hills Road, for instance. Zoning overlays can start helping that in the future. So if you have a zoning overlay and the overlay is primarily for greenery, then if this person sells their unit, their business, or if they want to do improvements, then they now fall under the zoning overlay role. So if that means you have to plant 2 trees or create some sort of lush environment, then over time you can start seeing how even Pine Hills Road can change and more greenery can be put in place there. And you could do that anywhere. Right.
And I think it would really benefit, Last thing that I want to ask you about is immigration. There's right now a concerted effort to try and invoke fear in county commissioners for going against like the militarization of state agencies to go after, our migrant communities. And, I have friends that work in schools that they're just taking kids. Their kids are just not getting picked up from school because their parents are gone. And, I worked for Commissioner Sumrad when DeSantis was threatening to remove her over the vote on the IGSA agreement, which, thankfully now there's a board consensus to, get rid of some of the language and have a lawsuit on that agreement. But your district is so diverse. You have a large Hispanic population, a large Asian population, a large Haitian population. Folks are scared and living in fear right now. Do you have any ideas on how to come into this space knowing that even DEI is now getting under attack if you use public dollars to do something that's perceived as diversity, equity, and inclusion, that you could be a target personally?
You asked if I have any idea. Yeah, I mean, as a teacher, I even think about it in my class. I don't have a lot of Haitian immigrants, but definitely Spanish. So I do think about their families. One of the things, I don't remember who it was, but I believe holding first, if there is a law, a state law, then somehow we have to see specifically what does the law state, and whatever loopholes there are, let's work within those loopholes,
right?
Without fear, because if that's one thing. The other thing is the executive order to hold any ICE enforcement officials accountable for anything that they do outside of their roles that does harm the people. Hold them personally accountable. I can't think of the governor that did that.
I think it's Gavin Newsom in California.
It was someone else. It was an executive order.
Okay.
But anything like that would help. And I will always support that.
It might have been Pritzker in Illinois, maybe.
But other than that, people have got to vote. We have to change. We have to change who's in office. I mean, so part of this does fall on every single voter to vote those persons out of office that do support these types of laws.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that immigrants are part of everything that we do. I mean, if you removed every immigrant, well, I'd be going, right? Because who's here? But
a lot of white people would be going.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they're not Native American.
I know, everyone's from somewhere. Everyone's from somewhere
they're not
else.
Native American.
You know,
but
we just simply came on a different boat.
Yeah.
You know, and whatever story that is that came with you, it still doesn't negate
they're like,
the
you're
fact.
Only an immigrant from this timeline to this timeline.
No. You know, so I'm against every ploy to remove anyone here from our country based on their status. I believe that if you were born here, you stay here. I believe that if you've started the process to be immigrated, to become a fully naturalized citizen, that you continue that process. So I don't agree with anything that harms individuals and definitely tears apart families simply because of hate.
Right.
And that's all it is. My other concern, and I did reach out to see about those kids that are not going to school.
Yeah.
What's happening to them? Because when this is all over, they're going to go back into school.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're going to be behind. So now you're going to have a whole nother set of problems.
If this is all over. I really pray that it will be.
It really will take votes.
Mm-hmm.
It really will take votes. I mean, because even if I tell you that I'm all for Commissioner Simrad and I'm all for immigrants being able to stay here, when it comes down to the law, what is the answer?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is the answer?
Getting people elected that will change the law.
Right. That's
the only way.
That's the only way.
I mean, we do have, I feel like Eatonville has a much lower turnout as what you would think, being that, Eatonville has such rich history and culture.
They should be running to the polls.
Right. People should be running to the polls, right? And so what do we need to do to rebuild that trust to get people to activate? Or are they just so traumatized from generations of being left behind and left out of the conversation that they just don't think it's worth it?
I really would have to see how many. Well, if we look at just the registered voters, of that percentage, it's a very low turnout. So to say that they don't have their voting rights, that wouldn't even come into play. I think they feel disenfranchised.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not seeing themselves in this whole process.
Right.
And I blame the politics of Eatonville with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if you come to meetings and people are going back and forth at each other, nothing's changing, what good is a vote?
Right.
You know? So that, to me, at the most, would just be a matter of conversation. And then after that is the power of the people or the will of the people.
Right. And I truly believe if we this year, 2026, have a wave of good leaders who are actually willing to be accessible and go out into the community, that is part of rebuilding trust.
That would make a difference. Absolutely.
Because people just want to know, like, right now there's several candidates going out and knocking on doors and people are like, this is the first time anyone's ever knocked on my door. Mm-hmm. And in this community and in this day and time, I mean, we should have a much higher engagement, So I'm excited to see this year and the outcome and the grassroots people that are coming and stepping up like you. Mm-hmm. It's really exciting. But with everything that you're doing, like, how do you refill your cup? How do you replenish yourself spiritually and emotionally so you can get up and put your feet on the ground the next day?
My house is a home. Mm-hmm. Like, when I go home, it is peace. Mm-hmm. I'm a Christian, so I believe in prayer, the power of prayer. I would say I surround myself with a bunch of people I don't. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty strong. So solitude works really well for me.
Solitude is bliss.
Yes, it works really well for me. But when I do need to talk to someone, I have a handful of people that I will reach out to. and just check in on them.
Yeah.
Because just hearing their voice, knowing they're doing okay, it kind of disconnects. Because I don't want to talk about me, because
that's why I'm trying to get away from that.
I'm calling you, but and I think that's it. I'm a very simple person. And watching Netflix
What are you watching?
Well, I just finished. My daughter made me look at From. It's actually not Netflix. It's Prime.
Okay.
From. It was a series. I made myself get through. It's just not my kind of movie. But I love Suits, Blacklist. Those really good. Matlock.
Oh,
the new Matlock.
The new Matlock.
Oh my gosh, one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, it's getting a ton of recognition right now. Well, that's so fun. I really love humanizing public servants because you do have a life.
I do have, believe it or not.
And I like that you also prioritize some you time, because I think that's really hard for people once you get into office, is you just feel guilty if you take time for yourself. And so it's important. So how can people support you, donate, and get in contact if they want to learn more? AngieGardner.com to learn more. Instagram, Angie Gardner for Orange County Commissioners. Look, just search. I never get my titles right. Facebook, same. Or just reach out. AG4FOR7 @gmail.com. Just reach out with an email, ask questions. Be happy to talk. And you're taking donations, volunteers, any specific needs that you have on the campaign? And if you give me just a quick second, you won't hear me ask for a whole lot of, most of my campaign contributions have come from me. Because if we're saying that, if I'm saying that I want to help people because I know they're struggling, that $5, $10, it makes a difference in their life. So as long as I can make it in just giving, using my own, then I would say, show me grace. Show me grace if you don't see that mail dropped in the, mail to you. But when you see me in your neighborhood, open your door, talk to me, because that's free. Right.
That's free. So support that way. Support with your vote, and ask questions. It is really hard to ask for money right now when gas is $4.30. Right, it is. You see. So I don't, and I've never been that kind of person to ask you to give. But if for those that do want to give, definitely reach out. If you go to my website, AngieGardner.com, you'll see a giving.
And are you link. like not taking any tourism, like Disney dollars or?
So I'm not going to tell you that I want it specifically for this reason. When I talk to those, I'm a union member with the school board. There are two sides to every single story. So when I talk to union members, they want the corporations to do better. When I talk to corporations, they're not quite sure what the union members want. I know they have negotiations but the two aren't, something's not connecting. But I know that the union members, they get their dollars from individual donors, and the corporate PACs get their money from individual donors. So I'm not understanding, and I don't want to sound naive, but I'm not understanding the difference in a PAC when it comes to money. Because if my total purpose for doing this work is for everyone, to help everyone, and if that means bridging a gap, I can only do it if I get into the job. And if I'm not going to ask you to give me $5, I know that hurts. I'm not going to ask you. But if you have $5 to give, then give the $5. But in the end, know that I'm going to do right by the people and what makes the county stronger and what makes District 7 stronger. That is my total commitment.
Yeah, 100%.
Nothing personal.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here and for working with us and talking through your platform. And thank you to everybody who's listening who, want to learn more about Angie Gardner. Go to
AngieGardner.com.
AngieGardner.com. And we'll see you there. It's August 18th for the primary and November 3rd for the general.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Lee.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you heard today, please comment, subscribe, and share. And visit organizingtovictory.com so that you can learn more about all the ways that we're going to be organizing this year. It is the most important election year of our lives. I know you hear that all the time, but we here at Organizing to Victory hope to not just talk about the issues, but to organize around the issues. So please share, subscribe, and follow us. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.